Hello everyone. In today's video we are going to continue with the game which was played in the Queen's Gambit declined. It's a game between Liviu-Dieter Nisipeanu against Deac Bogdan Daniel. So let's see, c4, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, knight f6. So again, from one c4 move order we end up in the Queen's Gambit declined, and white played bishop g5, which is not our recommendation in the course with Angelica, for the reason that it allows black to play dc4 and followed up with c5 or a6 b5. This move stands quite well theoretically speaking at this moment. So we first take on d5. In this game, however, it went differently. So knight bd7, e3, c6, and now takes, and after bishop d3, basically we are back to well-known waters, so to say. So black played bishop e7, queen c2, and knight h5. This is quite a fashionable continuation lately. Black can do this right away or include h6 and knight h5. And there are some minor differences. Both positions are playable for black surely, and he's very solid. So yeah, basically it's just a matter of taste which one black is going for. Here he went for knight h5. So white has to take, of course, knight queen e7, and here there are two moves, and it basically will, at this moment it's already decision time for white. We want to play with long castle or with short castle. So there is no move which really delays the decision. One would be knight f3, but it allows knight f4, pretty unpleasant move. So we have to make some awkward bishop f1, not to give up our nice bishop here. So yeah, one of the setups is like going with long castle, and then after knight b6, playing with the knight on f3 normally, some king b1, rook c1, knight a4, and so on. Black is also castling alongside. Extremely solid setup for black. And the other is our choice, knight g2 e2. So black plays g6, preparing short castle. Of course, since we castle short for black, it's just not possible to go to the long side. I mean, having already played c6, we have b4, b5, like in two moves. We are there to checkmate black. So black castles short. And as usual, in this 92 systems, our main plan is to play f3, e4. Now it's not possible at the moment because e3 is not protected. So rook a2, e1 is extremely logical. Knight to b6, also very natural move, and knight c1. So white is protecting the pawn on e3. Knight c1 may look a little bit strange, but actually, this knight g3 move would be a little bit of an inaccurate move in my opinion, because even though it's completely fine to have such structure, like this is just a great structure for white, but it probably also means that we have to switch for the minority attack. So bringing back the rook to b1, b4, but we already lost some time for it, and it's not really what we want. The reason for that is that since our goal is to play f3, e4, and then after de, fe, then this weakness of the double g pawns are quite relevant. So this is like not ideal at that moment to have that pawn structure. So it's much better to play knight to c1. Black plays bishop e6 and white plays f3, preparing to push e4. So basically this game was played like 10 over the board games or something like that, possibly many more over the internet. Two main continuations for black are rook a to d8 or c5. So basically both are preparation against against white's e4 push. So since the game was c5, let's start looking at rook a d8. And here we have two options, knight to b3 or queen f2 to support the pawn on d4. Of course, e4 we are not playing, so it's very important to highlight that even though after d4 we can take back with the rook, not to lose the d4 pawn, but this is not something we want. This looks awful. We have an isolated pawn on d4, knight can come back with the tempo. Suddenly all black pieces are good and we don't achieve anything. So we want to take back with the pawn. So therefore these two options, what I mentioned, and I believe one of them is significantly better, and that is queen f2. So why I believe it is better is that now e4 can be stopped, and it is the main move in the position, by f5. And the problem of f5 is that it weakens e5 square. And now we can understand that by not moving this knight, it can have a very nice way to reach this square on e5. So that's why I believe it's better to move the queen, and then the knight has this potential nice job on e5. But the end of subtleties don't end here, because if you just go for the most natural move, I would say bishop b1. Actually, black has a very surprising move, I would say. At least at first sight, for sure, it is f4. So the point is that e4 is not that great at this moment. Like black can take fe. There are some moves like bishop c4 or queen b4 to put pressure on our position, and also maybe something on the king side can happen. So it's not that clear. But we can take ef4 actually. So bishop b1, f4, ef4. Everything looks very good. Knight f4, knight 3 to e2. Shouldn't come as a surprise because the knight on c3 is extremely well restricted by black's pawns and also the knight. And of course, the c1 knight wants to go to e5. So it's logical that we want to trade this one. And indeed, if black trades, this is just a fantastic position for white. We double. We bring the knight to e5, maybe the queen to g3. We can start pushing the h pawn, like everything we want. But unfortunately, black can play this knight h5, and it's a super annoying move. So not letting us to trade the knights. Or if our knight goes, then this knight can return to f4 many cases. So yeah, we are struggling a little bit with too many pieces here with white. And yeah, for example, there is a line like knight d3, black plays rook e8, and if the knight goes to c3, then some queen g5. And again, if we go to e5, then this knight annoyingly returns to f4. So it's not that clear. It would be very great if c3 knight and h5 knight is not on the board, but here black has some chances to create play. So yeah, so that's a problem here. So that's why there is another, I would say, pretty deep move, which is good to know in such situation with white, is to play knight 3 to e2 first. So basically, it prepares for f4. So I mean, it basically means that knowing about this f4 idea. So the point is that if black plays f4, that's just a huge mistake, because here we can do what we want. So we trade the knights, we play rook e2, we double, we remove the bishop, and this position we already discussed. So f4, just huge mistake. Instead, it's better with black to wait, with a move like bishop f7. Then we go bishop c2. Idea is clear, bringing the knight. And rook f8 from black is like natural. For a second, it may look like that knight c4 poses some problems because two pawns are hanging. Sorry, not that one, but here. But we have knight f4. Very strong move, protecting on b2 by an x-ray. So basically, knight b2, knight h5 takes, bishop f5 is pretty awful for black with such king, with such a king with such pawn structure. And once again, the knight will come. So it's better just to play something like rook f8. And one structure I really wanted to show is this after this knight f4. So black can take this and ef4. So we have doubled f pawns now. And we can even say that black has a majority on the queen side. Of course, that's not really going anywhere at this moment. And this pawn structure is actually really nice because e5 square is not running away, and we don't have the same problem with the e4 square. So if this pawn would be on e3, for example, then position would be probably around equal. But here it's just very unpleasant for black because we will bring the knight to e5, then maybe double on the e file with the rooks is an idea, or just playing something like king to h1 and then g4. So that's another way to make progress in this position. So it's pretty risky for black, I would say, to take. Maybe it's better to go on knight g7. And again, there are some ideas here for white. I mean, let's say playing rook e2 or playing h4 are normal ways. Next move can be something like rook e2, maybe doubling here, making sure that e3 is fine. Later, maybe going for g4 is also fine. Bringing the knight again is an idea. So black is pretty passive. That's the problem. Okay, so that is rook a to d8, one of the main ways. Other one is c5, and I believe our play is easier against c5. Yeah, so as you know, it's important to mention and to see this that black is not playing c5 just for fun. So like for example, if white is just playing some move like a3, then c5 would be a huge mistake, positionally speaking, because we take, and our structure is perfect here on the king side. So that's why after f3, once we want to play e4, black plays c5, and after the trade, we have a weakened pawn on e3, so our structure is also not perfect. I don't think this pawn on e3 is as weak as the isolated pawn on d5, but it certainly gives some compensation for the d5 pawn. So in any case, our next moves are very easy. So knight b3, knight was very well positioned for this. Queen e7, knight d4, and knight f6, queen f2. Very logical moves from white, putting pieces on optimal squares. Queen can go to h4, for example, in some lies, but in general, having this pawn protected one more time will not hurt. Rook e8. And again, a typical and nice idea, which is good to know. This bishop on d3 is not that great when the structure is like this. I wouldn't move away this bishop from d3 if the pawns would be on g7 and h6, because then it's still not an open back rank because of the control of the h7 square, and also the f5 square can be used in some situations. But now the bishop is just hitting a wall there, so it makes sense to reposition it to b3 and then target the pawn on d5. Black played knight c4, bishop b3, and knight e5, which is actually a mistake. It looks active, but actually, if we don't blunder knight to d3, then it does not so much, and we will not blunder it. So actually, it was better to go to a5 and at least keep an eye on this bishop, which will be actually a crucial thing that black was not able to capture this bishop in an important moment. Here we play something like rook e2, doubling on the e file. Of course, it's not mainly preparation to play e4, but just to have this pawn under control. Once this pawn is under control, we can move with our queen, and probably in the future I will show a game when it's even an idea for white to push the pawns on the king side. So in any case, this knight a5 was better. Knight e5 is not so great. You can see these minor pieces here, like blocking black's heavy pieces, not very good. And again, this fork was not blundered on d3. Black played rook d8, very sad move, I would say. So completely giving up any hope on counterplay against the e3 pawn. So black is ready to suffer in some long defense. Queen h4, activating the queen, also pinning the other queen, so it cannot move because it is hanging. King goes to defend the knight. And yeah, as I said, normally in such situations like doubling on the d file is one idea for white, or just move around with the pieces a little bit, like with 3-3 knight to f4, for example, is an idea. But even more typical idea is to play something like f4. It can hurt black a lot if it works. Sometimes it does. So for example, in this position, it does. So knight eg4, f5, bishop d7, and for example, rook d1. Black is under tremendous pressure. This knight is very loose. This pawn is weak on d5. We can double later. So yeah, this was a good option for white. But what Nisipeanu played is extremely instructive, because this is a move which can be declined just by principles or something. Because what is black two main problems: pawn on d5 and bishop on e6, right? So very bad bishop isolated pawn. So normally the move we don't really want to play is e4. But it's important that something that we don't really want to play, it is certainly true, but when it works, then it's just extremely efficient. So, and this is one of those cases. So yeah, black has big issues in this position. So let's see what he can do. For example, if knight c6, then we take e6. Queen cannot take because we simply win a pawn. So f takes, ed. And here we don't win a pawn, because even though d5 is hanging, after knight takes is an attack on our queen, and once we take, then black is saving the piece and winning the game. So we don't take, but we just play rook e1. So let's say queen c5, queen f2, trading, and now the weakness of the d5 pawn is just too much for black. We will double, can put extra pressure on the pawn by attacking the knight on c6, and this pawn will be lost within the next few moves. So this is not good. Black can also take with the knight, but yeah, it will not solve the problems. Queen takes on e7, knight takes on e7, and for example, knight e4 now. So black still has a pawn weakness. We have a very strong bishop here. We can play rook e1, we have knight g5, knight c5 ideas. Just a very unpleasant endgame for black. So instead of knight c6, d4, which looks very logical, was played. And now bishop takes on f6, e6, f e6, and knight e4. So in this way, Nisipeanu basically just transformed his advantage. Now the pawn is not on d5, but maybe even more unpleasant on e6, which is much easier to attack for white, and even makes the king a little bit more loose. So now black played knight c6. It's tough because ideas like knight g5 are pretty much the air. So knight c6 was played, knight takes, b takes. So now black is there with three weak pawns, and yeah, that's a very tough situation, positionally speaking. Nisipeanu went for a rather direct approach at this moment, which I don't really believe was needed. So he took on d8. I rather would just play something like rook c1. Like, we have all the time in the world, so just attacking one pawn here. Black plays rook c8 and then rook e1. So basically, white is just lining up against these pawns. Knight e4 is not a move. This is knight can go to c5, g5 later. I mean, it looks like an absolute nightmare for black. So probably this was better. He went for capture on d8, rook takes on d8, rook to c1. And yeah, here in this position, basically we have no threat. That's the problem with white. So that's why black played a5, but unfortunately a5 does nothing much. The problem for black is still this, queen is pinned. So it would have been much, much better to do something about it, and rook d7 was a strong move. Strangely enough, this position is not that bad for black. I mean, again, it looks horrific, but it's not that bad. So what is the problem? I mean, the problem is, as I said, this rook c6 is not really a threat because rook d1, king f2, knight takes on e4, our queen is hanging, it's a check, queen e4, and rook d2 check. This is not an easy position. Like, it's completely unclear. Black has counterplay against our second rank. So I looked at knight c5, but then black can play rook d5, queen f2 to trying to stabilize, but suddenly black is getting pretty active with the heavy pieces. So ideas like rook d1, also the knight can be activated maybe in the next moves, but it's pretty fine on f6 for now. So there is rook d2. So yeah, I mean, it looks very bad, but actually it's close to equal. So it was not that great with white to trade like this, but yeah, a5 is not solving the problems, but white is solving his problems with his next move. He played h3, very strong move. Point is extremely simple, that he wants to take on c6 and meet rook d1 with king h2, and that's just a pawn. And yeah, basically black is collapsing here very, very quickly, which is again more what you would expect from such position with so many weaknesses. But again, this rook d7 was a nice chance for black. So knight d5, we could trade and enter a much better endgame, but since our king is much safer, queen g3 was played, and black played rook c8, which is the losing move. He could have put up some resistance with knight f6, even though it's losing a pawn after knight f6, queen f6, queen c7, king h6, rook takes on c6, rook d2, rook c2. So yeah, something like this can happen. Black can choose if he wants to play its queen and rook or just a queen and game. Of course, it's on the verge of objectively lost position, but still possible to fight here. Instead, rook c8 is just completely hopeless because now black is passive and he has weaknesses with a weak king. So queen e5, king h6 was played, and yeah, of course, king f8 blunders the rook to queen h8, queen f7 blunders to knight d6, knight f6 is just a self-pin for no reason and probably can be immediately punished by g4. And yeah, on king g8, basically it's extremely simple. So we play rook c5, all three pawns are under attack and there is no way to protect simply. So queen has to guard e6, rook has to guard c6, and if a4, then simply rook a5. And next will be capture the pawn. Black has absolutely no compensation whatsoever. So king h6, yeah, but playing with such a king also not so easy. And now rook c5 is good, but rook c4 is even better. Basically with ideas of eventually checkmating black. So g5 was played, and after knight takes on g5, black resigned. He is losing lots of material here. So queen takes on g5, queen e6, and it's not only a rook, it can be even a queen. So for example, okay, king goes to g7, just rook g4, And if king goes to h5, then there is a nice variation: g4 check, king h4, and there is a forced checkmating sequence against the black king. So that's how this game finished. It's interesting for us from mainly two perspectives. Let's say, like, what happens if c5 is played, or if it's or e4 is stopped by rook a d8. So we could see some ideas in such cases. And it's not it's not the most thematic way to break down black's possession this e4, but once again, you just have to keep in mind that it can be super effective when it works well. All right, so that was our game for today. I hope you liked the video. Let me remind you that it's again a sale on Chessable. So if you are interested in the course, you can check it out there, or the free version of it, 3 hours of video explanation from Angelica. And yeah, hope to see you again with some new videos.